It's Tuesday, September 12th, and another update on the tropics. Really not a lot of change from what we've been thinking since last week and even yesterday with the track of Hurricane Lee. We still have Margot out there and what will likely become Nigel here in a few weeks. But again, we're just 2 days past the peak of hurricane season. That usually averages out around September 10th, but there's still a lot of activity to go. Maybe about 56–57% of the activity in the hurricane season usually is after September 10th. You can notice how there is a little bit of a peak there in later October. So still a ways to go, and the tropics are fairly active. We have Lee, we have Margot, and then we have this wave here that is southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. Has about an 80% chance of development over the next several days. Question still as to where that would go, likely here into the central Atlantic, but there's a lot of time to watch that. Talking about Margot first, which is out there, it's 835 miles west-southwest of the Azores. Still a Category 1 storm. It's sort of just going to drift around over the next several days and eventually, slowly, gradually weaken to a tropical storm by Sunday. Again, no threat to land, so we really haven't talked much about Margot. Of course, our big story is Hurricane Lee, still a major hurricane, a Category 3 storm, was up to a 5. We have seen some fluctuations. It's undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle where the eye contracts and a new one forms around it, and it looks like that is about to wrap up here. It doesn't mean a lot as far as the strength here over the next couple of days. I think the bigger issue will be some of the cooler waters, some of these 70s, upper 70s right here, just off the coast of South Carolina and especially up towards the island of Bermuda. That's still some of the wake from Idalia and Franklin from earlier this season. Not quite as cold as it was just a couple of weeks ago, but even just that little bit of a drop in temperature of the sea surface will help weaken the storm, especially once it gets farther to the north where water temperatures here off the coast of New England are in the 60s and 70s. It's also going to encounter the front that is pushing through the eastern seaboard on Wednesday. That's also what's going to help pick up the storm, help weaken it a little bit as it encounters some wind shear, especially on the western side, and eventually it'll undergo a transition from a tropical system to an extratropical one. And all that means is it'll basically, the winds will start to spread out from the center as it interacts with that cold front. So let's talk about Lee, and we'll get into some more of the specifics here in a moment. Moving to the northwest at 7 miles per hour. It's about 535 miles south of Bermuda. Again, it is expected to slowly weaken as it moves over those cooler waters and interacts with the front, and eventually by Saturday, as it's forecast to make landfall right around Halifax, Nova Scotia, down to a minimal hurricane. But again, it's going to be undergoing a transition. And with the hurricane, the strongest winds are in the eye wall, right around the center of the hurricane. Once we start to transition into an extratropical system, those winds start to spread out from the center, and so a larger area will likely experience some of those stronger winds. And I would say even from Long Island all the way up to Newfoundland is under the gun for some of these stronger winds, certainly not hurricane strength, but there will be the possibility of tropical storm force winds even out towards the Cape in Massachusetts, and some gusts that could be even a little bit higher. Again, landfall right now is expected sometime late Saturday, maybe early Sunday, depending on how quickly and how fast the storm moves off towards the north. Could still be a little bit towards the west. Maine right now is in that cone of uncertainty, and there are some models that do bring it on shore somewhere in eastern Maine. So you can see that here with the European models. Again, we run the same model 50 different times, tweak the initial settings, and you can almost think of this as like forecast confidence. And as we get farther and farther out, the models do spread out a bit, but you can see they're very consistent here, bringing it well west of Bermuda. Bermuda will still feel the effects because it is a large storm. But notice as we get here into the end of the week, there are some models that bring it as far west, or some runs of the European that bring it as far west as Rhode Island. The average right in here brings it very close to eastern parts of Maine, and then up towards the Bay of Fundy and to eastern Canada. So some of the models keep it a little bit farther east, some a little bit farther to the west. So we can't totally rule out something making landfall maybe in Maine, still several days away, but certainly from Long Island all the way up towards Newfoundland should be on the lookout. And even the American model keeps it here just west of Halifax as far as the average, but you can see there are a few runs that bring it closer here right across the Cape and up towards areas of Maine and even into close to New Hampshire, some a little bit farther to the east. So some uncertainty as we head towards the end of the forecast period. We're fairly certain as far as things go here over the next several days as the storm passes well east of the mid-Atlantic. And these are all of the specialty hurricane computer models. And you can see they're a little bit farther to the east, which is why the National Hurricane Center is still calling for that landfall here across Nova Scotia, even though the European, typically one of our better computer models, does tend to bend it a little bit closer back towards Maine. So we take a look at what we expect with some of those high seas. Again, that's one of the concerns, and these swells are spreading all the way back towards the Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas, and the eastern seaboard. The entire eastern seaboard has the threat of high waves and rip currents as we go through the week, peaking as we head towards Thursday and Friday. You can see as the storm moves off towards the north, even Bermuda is going to be clipped by some of these higher waves. When we get into those yellows, talking 25 to 30-foot waves, higher, of course, near the center of the hurricane, but Bermuda will definitely feel the effects with those strong winds. There's a tropical storm watch already posted for the island, so tropical storm conditions are expected for the island, even though the main center of the storm will pass just off the coast. And even here through the Outer Banks, there are some forecasts that call for 10 to 12-foot seas very close to the Outer Banks. That could, of course, lead to some beach erosion, some overwash, possibly of Highway 12, and as we mentioned already, up and down the eastern seaboard, calling for that high threat of rip currents. And then the forecast carries the storm off towards the north Saturday here, 5 a.m. just south of Nova Scotia, and that's where the computer continues to bring some of those highest waves. And then as the storm moves inland and starts to collapse and weaken, we'll see that wave threat start to minimize, and maybe even here across Virginia and North Carolina and through the mid-Atlantic, we could see those red flags start to drop as we head towards the second half of the weekend. Take a look at the two main computer models, the American and the European. This is the European. Here's Margot. Here's Lee. This is the spin. This dip right here, that's the trough. That's what is going to help pick up Lee and accelerate it off towards the north. Notice as we get here into Friday, 1 o'clock, there's Bermuda, so just northwest of Bermuda. And the European, again, brings it here over eastern parts of Maine by late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, just after midnight. That's the European, and then accelerates it off towards the north and east. Here's that big trough again coming in, a little reinforcing shot coming in that'll help carry the storm off towards the north and east. And there's that area that we were watching, that 80% chance that'll likely become Nigel. Still spinning out there, and this is Monday of next week. Then as we look at the American model, there's Margot. Here's Lee, fairly consistent, a little bit faster here north of Bermuda as we get into Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock, and then making landfall here towards the southern tip of Nova Scotia by Saturday afternoon. So a little bit of some changes, some differences, same general idea. As we head into the weekend, Saturday into early Sunday, landfall possible here across Maine or Nova Scotia. And of course, there's Nigel out there that we'll continue to watch. Again, long time to watch it. So that's the latest on the tropics. Still definitely concerns for New England and into areas of eastern Canada. At this point, with it transitioning into an extratropical system, exactly where it makes landfall isn't going to make that big of a difference in the conditions, but certainly gusty winds, heavy rain through parts of New England and eastern Canada, an area that has already dealt with flooding just these past few days with some of the heavy rain here through New England, and there's the potential for more heavy rain as we head into the weekend.